All right, folks, welcome back to the program. Thanks for being with us this morning. I want to welcome to the program for the first time. We have Mr. Bob Zeidman on the line. Bob is a tech expert in Silicon Valley, among other things. Bob, welcome to the program.
Hi, Paul. Thanks a lot for having me.
Yes, I want to have you on. I want to talk a little bit about this news that came out. I really can't believe this. I mean, I guess in the days of shadow banning and the way conservatives are treated, really the way if you go against the grain and go to the opposite side of what the conventional political thought is, you kind of get bullied for it. And we have this story I'm putting up on the screen here. This is from CNET. Facebook reportedly fired Palmer Luckey for political views. What can you tell us about Palmer Luckey?
Well, what I can tell you is he is a conservative/libertarian. It's a little bit hard to tell where he falls. Although, there's a growing number, fortunately, of libertarian/conservatives, young people, entrepreneurs in the Valley. So they are pushing back. But, anyone who's not liberal, left-leaning politically is in the vast minority here.
And so this guy was founder of a company called Oculus. And then, I guess, did Facebook buy Oculus? Is that what happened?
Yeah, it's a fascinating story. He was pretty young when he started Oculus. So, it's this virtual reality company. It's the kind of thing where you put these goggles on and you can look through them and see a whole new world, a three-dimensional world, and it feels like you're actually in that world. And, of course, this has been predicted for a long time, but there was something called, I don't remember what it's called, but it was a factor that these things would make people nauseous, basically. There's something the brain does when it's looking out at the real world that it compensates. When you move your head real quickly, nobody gets dizzy, and when you're looking around, you don't feel like you're falling. But these things happened in virtual reality. And so he was able to actually create a system that didn't have that flaw. And he did it when he was pretty young. He got a lot of publicity. He started building these things. And then Facebook bought his company a couple of years ago for about $2 billion. And for the sake of full disclosure, I actually was an investor, a small investor, in his original company.
Okay. I have a quote here. Let's see, this is from a Zero Hedge article. Let's see. Not long after Luckey and his lawyer negotiated a payout of at least $100 million, representing an acceleration of stock awards and bonuses he would have received through July 2019, plus cash. Let's see here. Then it says, in other words, it was Trump's fault that a $10,000 donation resulted in a $100 million payout just a few months later. So that's an interesting take on all of this. I really want to focus, though. Again, we're talking with Bob Zeidman. I want to focus on, you're in Silicon Valley. And right now, Bob, if you're a conservative, I mean, this is not a good time to be a conservative and be in technology, right?
Well, like I said, there are some pockets. There are some companies. There are people like there are some people who have founded big companies who are libertarian, but it's hard to out yourself. I'm a conservative politically, and I avoid talking about the subject. I can't say that I've ever been hurt outright because of my political beliefs, although if people go online, they can search and find things that I've written. But it's really hard. I'll give you an example. We bought a house, 15 years ago, and the people this was during, I guess it was Bush v. Kerry. And Kerry, there were a lot of Kerry signs, John Kerry. And so we had to be really careful what we said. We become friendly with the people who own the house, and we know that they're liberals. And I think they know our political views at this point, because my wife and I are, we're not pushy about it, but we don't hide it either. But in buying the house, we were nervous about saying anything. In fact, our broker said we should submit a little resume about ourselves so that people know who's buying their house. And we left off anything political because we knew that around here people might refuse to sell to us.
Gosh.
They knew we were
It's sad because it's like they just don't want to even have the idea or the discussion. They're scared of the ideas. So many of the people on the left, from what I can tell, now not all, but a lot of the people on the left, Bob, they seem to engage with the right, already assuming that they're just a better human being than those on the right. I mean, and that is why I think you have this gentleman here who's been fired, we now know he was fired just for giving $10,000 to a group that was not in favor of Hillary Clinton being the next president. I mean, at some point, I just feel like that weakens our republic, our democracy, the freedom of association. You're gonna be targeted, and I would say it's un-American. But then I know the left would just say, "Well, I'm un-American." I mean, it's really, really interesting times we're living in.
Yeah, so one thing I just want to make clear from my understanding is I don't know that he was fired for that reason, but I can say that there was a lot of pressure to get rid of him. And in the past, Mark Zuckerberg, who is the founder of Facebook, although he leans to the left, he has been generally fair in his comments. But the vast majority of employees at Facebook are left-leaning, and around here, you're right. Left-leaning means if you're conservative, you're evil. And so when they see some evil person running the company, I'm sure there was a lot of pressure to get rid of him. And Palmer Luckey, the founder of Oculus, for all we know, might have said that this pressure was too much. He's got a fortune. He's worth a lot of money. He can go off and do his own thing. And they might have negotiated a settlement for him to leave, so it might have been that he felt uncomfortable. So I don't know if it's specifically Facebook fired, but I know for sure there was a lot of pressure to fire him.
Okay, yeah. And it's over political beliefs. So
exactly.
We're talking with Bob Zeidman. He's a tech expert in Silicon Valley. You can find out more, by the way. You've got a website, right, Bob? Zeidman Consulting, is that right?
Yeah, that's true. I do a lot of, I help out in intellectual property litigation. Probably not many of your listeners have a need for that. But you can also look up my books on Amazon. I've got a few books that I know your listeners would like.
Awesome. While I have you
when I say books, they're novels. And one of them
okay.
is a conservative-leaning political satire that I think they'll like.
A conservative-leaning political satire. Well, yeah, definitely. Well, go ahead. Give us the name of the book.
Sure. The book is Good Intentions, and it's about a future world where the government takes care of everything for us. And, how could you imagine anything that would be better than that?
Yes. That sounds very interesting. Yeah, kind of.
It's been described as a kind of a funny Atlas Shrugged.
That's what I was about to say. It reminds me of an Atlas Shrugged, but it's satire, so that's great. Well, Bob, while I have you on the phone, Silicon Valley tech expert, correct me if I'm wrong, but the way I see how the big tech companies have reacted to the 2016 election, and I see that they've reacted in a way that to me seems that they think they lost, or their side lost, because there was too much freedom on the internet, and so they blamed it on Russia, or election meddling. But as I watch what happened in the midterms, and them deplatforming people, and them taking away, putting pressure on the hosting capabilities or these hosting services for some websites that they don't like, I thought, man, this is really what election meddling looks like, in my opinion. What were your thoughts?
Yeah, pretty much along the same lines. First of all, I think it should be no shock to anybody that Russia wants to meddle and has probably been meddling for years in our elections. The question really is how much effect did it have? I don't know. And I think it's not a good thing that they're meddling, but I think there's a lot more dirty politics going on. And certainly this, censorship of particularly conservative views is really troubling. Facebook and Google and these companies have the ability through complicated, sophisticated algorithms to determine what people want to see and what they don't want to see. And if people want to see an extreme left or an extreme right website or advertisement, there should be no reason to stop them from doing that. But these companies, basically, if they rely solely on their algorithms, they get stuff going through that they don't like. They see people seeing Fox News. I mean, Fox News, to be honest, has been, my friends trash anything that I post from that site, let alone any other conservative site. So while their algorithms actually work to prevent people seeing what they don't want to see, which is not always a good thing either, now they've got these committees of people who go through and say, oh, well, this thing doesn't meet our standards, and that thing doesn't meet our standards, and the standards are very, quote-unquote, progressive, liberal views. So anything that's not progressive or liberal has a hard time getting through their human filters. It's not the machine algorithms. It's not the artificial intelligence. It's the committees of people they have who are blocking things because they don't think they're appropriate.
Yeah, they're to me non-playable characters, NPCs. The NPC meme is still alive and well, and I feel like also, Bob, the right has been extremely effective at creating these memes, all kinds. They're funny, they get a point across, and then people get their Twitter accounts canceled, or they get and. Fundamentally, I've been saying this on the show for a little while now. The left is getting more and more anti-comedy. They don't like laughter unless it's laughing at, let's say, a war veteran, right? Okay, that is funny to laugh at a guy who lost his eye, but this other stuff over here, if you want to laugh at Hillary Clinton or what, that's off limits, and it's just like, wow, since when did liberals become anti-liberty, and it's been that way for a while. But let me ask you this. Is Facebook listening to everything we say?
I think they are, but it's difficult. I honestly think, look, I did some work for Facebook in the early days, again, to be, open here. When they were in the litigation involved in the movie that was made into The Social Network, I'm an engineer, but I was their expert witness and helped them survive that early stage where they would have failed without winning that lawsuit. If any of your listeners have seen the movie The Social Network, which, by the way, is a great movie. Mm-hmm. And I think Mark Zuckerberg is trying to be fair. That's just my impression. I don't know him, but I think he's trying to be fair. But there's so much pressure, and you raise a good point. The same people who for years said the internet needs to be open and free and uncensored are now saying it needs to be open and free and uncensored except for that conservative viewpoint, which is so poisonous that we don't want people to see it. And by the way, there's always going to be extremist nutcases in the world. There's not much we can do about that. And I would rather that they have the ability to post on the internet so I can figure out what they're doing, whether they're extreme left or extreme right. But when we censor it, it goes underground, and then nobody has any idea what's going on. And that was the whole idea that our founding fathers had for free speech.
Mm-hmm. You're exactly right. And our founding fathers, one of the reasons they were able to conduct a successful Revolutionary War is because they had the communication systems, the mail routes, the horse travel, to get information to the different colonies quickly. And that's why they were able to find out about, things like, the Boston Massacre or others. They were able to get the information, and they were printing it in their local communities. And the internet is like that, but it's on steroids. And so, I really think, that with the midterm elections, for example, I thought that the power and the influence of the mainstream media it was a win for them. They reestablished themselves to some degree. I know we had the Republicans gained in the Senate with flips in Missouri and Indiana, and we'll see what happens in Florida. But I really do think, though, they really doubled down. The social media people doubled down. I think there was a lot of shadow banning going on, and you correct me if I'm wrong, Bob. I think that hurt a lot of information getting out. But, I mean, for the last, pretty much 2 years, they've done nothing but tell you that Donald Trump is a KGB agent. He's also a Nazi. And he also may be loyal to the king of Saudi Arabia more than the people. I mean, and I really think it was effective. They really are trying to control us at this point.
Yeah, I think, look, I think one thing that I tell people is that the people in Silicon Valley don't have an understanding of what the values are in America. So they really think that they're blocking stuff that most people don't want to see. But the fact is, roughly 50% of America wants to see some of the things they're blocking. And yeah, they're blocking some extremist stuff, but they're also blocking some mainstream stuff. But I think, as you've pointed out, the mainstream media in America has this left-leaning bias, so that gets through. I've seen some really ridiculous things coming from mainstream media, as I'm sure you have, about President Trump or about others. And look, the political parties are doing it. Except when the Republicans and conservatives do it, it has more of a chance of being blocked on Twitter, for example. But when the Democrats do it, it's rarely, if ever, blocked. And I think that's a problem. During the elections, of course, both parties are going to spin stuff their direction. But when you're blocking one side and not the other, then of course that's going to skew things. So people in Silicon Valley, though, they think they're doing the right thing because nobody wants to see this stuff or nobody should see this stuff, and everyone agrees. Which, by the way, people all the time will just tell me their political views during a business meeting, for example, not understanding that I might not think the way they do, because in Silicon Valley, it's just hard to believe anybody thinks differently. And those of us who do think differently, a lot of us keep quiet because we're afraid of how it'll affect our careers. Like getting back to Palmer Luckey, how it affected his career at Facebook.
That's got to be really tough to be in that situation. And yeah, that even still happens in Arkansas. You'd be amazed at how many conversations I have with people that would say, "Can you believe what Donald Trump did now?" And I immediately know, because I keep up with the news. I know which outlet they read, and more importantly, I know which outlet they didn't read when it comes to what they're hearing about the president today. And that to me is extremely, extremely frustrating. And but we're talking with Bob Zeidman. Bob's a tech expert in Silicon Valley. You hear what he has to put up with. Let me ask you last question, Bob. I thank you for spending time with us. Do you think the government needs to get involved here and regulate some of these tech giants that are private entities, but they're coordinating at the same time to censor political speech? Do we need to have a discussion about what is the public square in an age where we as society are watching how we communicate with one another? Technology is completely changing it, and we need to resist the urge to burn books and have book burnings. And I think that's what the real issue is, but I don't know what the government's role is, if any.
Yeah, that's a really tough question, because I really believe in less government regulation in general. But, there are cases when the government needs to step in. Is this one of them? I don't know, because I'll tell you, right now, if the government stepped in, it would probably push Facebook and Google and all these places to allow conservative viewpoints and to be more open and less shadow banning. But on the other hand, if there's another administration that's Democratic, would they come in and do the same things? I doubt that very much. They would push the other direction. So in general, I don't like that. I'm hoping that, voices like yours can get the message out that that the people need to pressure Facebook and Google to stop this shadow banning, stop this kind of censorship. And, I know that's happening. I think we're going through a whole new world, a whole new paradigm for communicating with each other. And it's through phones and computers, and it's no longer face-to-face. And I think eventually that'll all shift out, and I hope it, settles into something that's good and has better and more communication among people. But I think we're going to have to wait and see. I think it's going to be a few decades before we see where this is going.
Bob Zeidman, really appreciate meeting you, having you on the program for the first time, and I'd love to do this again soon, especially when we're going to have more technical stories in the news, I'm sure, soon. So I really appreciate meeting you, sir.
Sure. Well, thank you very much for having me, Paul. I really appreciate it.
All right.
And I look forward to coming back on your show.
Sounds great, sir. You have a great rest of your week.
You too.
All righty, folks, we're going to be back in just a moment.